Welcome to the Orlando Sentinel's editorial board interview for the GOP primary in Florida's 9th Congressional District, which stretches from East Orlando all the way down to Yeehaw Junction and includes Kissimmee and St. Cloud in Osceola counties. The seat is currently held by Darren Soto, a Democrat, and the people who are vying to challenge him in November are John Quinones, Jose Castillo, and Thomas Chalifoux. And so we will dive in with our first question, and that would be: a majority of Americans in both major parties identify the economy as the #1 issue in this election. And they say they trust Republicans more than they do Democrats to fix the problems that they perceive. What do you think that Republican candidates should be offering as solutions to the problems Americans see with their economy? Let's start with Mr. Quinones.
All right, well, thank you for the opportunity. You know, I will tell you that I grew up in District 9 since I was 14 and moved here from Puerto Rico. And I have seen a lot of changes in the district. And unfortunately, the last 3 years, the economy has been one of them. And inflation, it's felt in the pocketbook of you know, the pockets of all the families that are here. The reality is that, you know, I believe I'm a fiscal conservative Republican. And so by that, I mean, when I served in the county commission, I was chairman of the county commission. While I was chairman, we cut the budget by 20% without sacrificing, you know, safety of our community. Those are the values that we need to take to Congress. And I think families trust Republicans because, you know, like myself, I'm a business owner. I've been here for over 40 years in Central Florida, but as an attorney for 30. And so I've had to pay, you know, payroll. I've had to do a lot of things that families have to do. And so we see that, you know, we have an enormous deficit. Well, just like families, you don't want to have a deficit to run your family. You don't want to have a deficit to run your country. And so there's a lot of things we could do. And we did 3 years ago under the Trump administration. I'm a Trump Republican in that the policies that Trump established had to do with being energy independent. I'm going to bring that to Congress as one of my priorities. Securing our border, that's another priority. And number 3, pro-family policies that I'm going to take to common sense, really, to take to Congress. So that is what I would take to Congress, and I hope to earn your support in the upcoming Republican primary so we can flip this seat red.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chalifoux.
The biggest issue, I think, in most people's mind is the ever-increasing inflation caused by the government that they continue to print more money and devaluating our dollar. We're spending billions of dollars on things that benefit few Americans. We have a spending problem in Washington. We certainly collect enough taxes. We have a really bad problem spending American taxpayers' monies on everywhere in the world. A great example is Ukraine. This is a problem that belongs to NATO as much as the United States. I think we've got to get other countries to participate if we want to get involved in the country within the NATO interest. So we have to first evaluate any foreign or domestic policy when it comes to spending money. You pass a budget, and once you pass the budget, Congress has to learn to spend the money within the budget, not continue to print more money. I've been a businessman in Osceola County for 46 years. My family moved here 53 years ago in District 9. I'm very familiar with the growth in Central Florida. Central Florida is a fast area in all of Florida. And our problem is that we're growing so fast that we can't keep up with the infrastructure. So one of the issues that I see is we need to stop spending American taxpayer money all around the world and start spending that money back. We can get that money 5 to 7 times. The real issue is government wasteful spending.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Jose Castillo. I'm last election's runner-up. I'm running again because it's obvious that our country is heading in the wrong direction. My goal for running again, for going to Congress, is I want to help Donald Trump and JD Vance return the American dream back to the American people. Yes, it's obvious that voters across the nation trust Republicans more with the economy because we've seen from the last 4 years an attack on our economy, on our energy independence from the Biden administration. Even before that, when Trump was president, a lot of Democrat governors locked up our economy and hurt a lot of American families who were depending on those jobs. But the things that we need to do to help the economy is we got to start drilling, right? Help become energy independent again. We have to stop printing money, this poor, reckless fiscal policy of the current administration. We also have to close the border. Listen, earlier this morning, I was talking to a voter, and she told me that she works at a business where about 60% of the employees are illegals, right? They came here illegally. How can they work? Well, the Biden administration gives them permits to work. They can work anywhere. And in this company, guess who's getting the hours? It's the illegals because they have a lower wage. So that's affecting American families, and that's not good for America. The last thing is that this is the theme park capital of the world, right? This is the hospitality, tourism. A lot of the people in our community, in the workforce, depend on tips. And as President Trump said, I would go to Congress, and on day one, I will get there to make sure that we can pass a law to help the workers in our community and make sure there's no taxes on tips.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I did have a follow-up to that. Among those who lack faith that the nation's economy has recovered, the increasing costs of everything from housing, fuel, consumer goods, even fish sandwiches, these are cited as the major concern that people have. What steps should Congress take specifically to give families a break? And let's start with Mr. Castillo.
Well, like I said in the previous question, we have to work on the economy, right? People are suffering right now. They're struggling to, how do I pay for, they're having those kitchen table conversations. How do I pay for the roof over my head, my car insurance, groceries, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to, like I said before, we have to start drilling, stop printing money, and we have to focus on getting manufacturing back into the U.S. I know that a lot of people right now, especially in this state, they're struggling with home insurance, right? Here in Florida, we get storms every year, and oftentimes you get leaks and you have to replace your roofs. Insurance is going up, up and up. The cost is just because of inflation, partly. But think about this, right? If we were manufacturing some of those building goods right here in the good old US of A, and we had that good quality workmanship instead of that cheap foreign materials that we're using on our shingles, perhaps our roofs would last 20 years instead of having to replace them every 5 to 10 years. So that's what we got to focus. We got to start drilling, stop printing money, and bring manufacturing back into America.
Mr. Chalifoux, same question.
What steps can we do? Well, we've been a businessman. I've hired and signed payroll checks of thousands of employees in Central Florida, multiple companies. I started from the grassroots and worked my way to where I am today. The steps we can do is, as I mentioned earlier, we have to reduce the cost of government spending. We have passed regulations that make American products more expensive while the rest of the world have very low environmental regulations. America represents 4% of the world's population. There's 8 billion people in the world. America is 4% of that. When they talk about environmental regulations, we all want clean water. We all want clean air, right? And that's something given. And we should never relax that. At the same token, we need to have fair regulations, fair tariffs, make American products affordable. Unfortunately, a great deal of our trade is being products that are being manufactured other everywhere outside the U.S. So I think fair trade policies, reducing unnecessary government regulations, and cutting wasteful government spending. You know, it's simple. Stop being wasteful with American dollars.
Mr. Quinones.
All right, well, let's think the first 100 days. You know, Trump gets into office. We get back into the Trump policies that were there before the disaster of the Soto-Biden administration. So we start with the Keystone Pipeline. We start opening up the Keystone Pipeline again, stop those regulations that prevented the Keystone Pipeline from being constructed. We obviously start drilling safely. Common sense will tell you that we would be energy independent with that, and also with the Alaskan oil resources, and open that up in a safe manner. Now, once we're independent on domestic oil, you know, we can even be exporters at some point. That will reduce the deficit that we have, in my opinion. That will also lower the interest rate, and that would help with the inflation. So families can feel that on the pocket. Simple solutions. Yes, no tax on tips for the working class, especially in the service-oriented industry here in District 9. That's just 100 days that we can start doing some things that reverse the Biden-Soto disaster economic administration and policies, and get us back into our feet. Obviously, we're going to secure the border immediately. We're going to stop the nonsense that the Biden open border and Soto open border policies has brought and has sucked in the local resources for so many places, especially here as well in District 9. And, you know, those are only the few things. But on the long run, we're going to essentially be independent on oil, secure borders, and we're also going to cut the deficit and taxes so we can get the working class people working and actually contributing to our economy again. Thank you.
I'll ask the next question. So speaking of the budget, defense spending currently takes up a little more than 13% of the federal budget. Is that excessive, not enough, or about right? And we'll start with Mr. Chalifoux.
I'm an Army colonel, U.S. Army retired, 30 years service. I have a great deal in the military budgets. I was chief of staff of the 143rd Transportation Command, largest Army Transportation Command. We spent the budget's currently about $900, which we say, well, is that enough or not enough? I think when you look at the military budget, our money wisely, are we cutting out unnecessary expenses? We all know and heard examples of how the Defense Department will spend $100 on a $10 hammer. I think one of the things we have to do is we want to spend money on the force, the people that are doing our fighting, and is personnel. We need to pay our military personnel as much as competitive other rates. We got to keep quality people, and with our military is the lack. And I feel the leadership, starting from the top down. I have a nephew that's in the military, and he shares with me some of the we see in the military. The question is, do we have enough money in the defense budget to do the job? I think we do. I think we need to spend our money more wisely. We need to have better accountability. I feel like we need to have accountability of how they're spending that money and make sure they're not wasting it. Again, I have a tremendous amount of experience at the top levels of command, and I'm very concerned about A, leadership, and B, spending our money wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Quinones.
Thank you. You know, I'm a constitutionalist when it comes to protecting our domestic tranquility. If you look at the preamble, it's very simple. We have to ensure domestic tranquility and common defense. And that comes through a strong military. And so to me, having a strong budget and a strong defense is of not only of most important, it's our requirement as public officials at the federal level. We also have to make sure that those that protect us are well taken care of, not only when they are serving, but also when they come back. They come back with some mental health issues. They come back with a lot of other issues that, unfortunately, we have illegals that are getting more benefits than some of the homeless veterans that are in our cities, and that needs to stop. So to me, the budget needs to be looked at all the time when it comes to defense, but it needs to be looked at from a matter of strength. And we also need to make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. When we get into exterior conflicts and exterior wars, we have to ensure that European nations are paying their fair share. Trump got them to do that, and Biden and Soto undid that, and as a result, we need to get back to Trump policies, and I'm going to make sure that that happens when I'm elected and when I'm your congressman in District 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Castillo.
Yes, thank you. Listen, I'm going to tell you a story to tell you so you understand my philosophy when it comes to our military. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, but I grew up in Central America, in Honduras. And when I was there, I went to an American high school. When I was 17, over there, I was threatened with a gun by a thug from another school. And back there in Honduras, there is no Second Amendment. I could not protect myself. In fact, my parents would have to go through hoops to be able to get a weapon to defend me, right? I believe I have a God-given right to defend myself. What did my dad do? He hired a bodyguard, and we had a meeting with the parents of this kid. And my dad told them, if your son ever, harms my boy or any of his friends, I will come back and I will harm you, and every member of your family. That was enough to stop that. No one ever, not this guy, not his friends, not everyone in his gang, ever bothered me again. That was a deterrent, right? So like Ronald Reagan said, I believe in peace through strength. So I'm not upset about the budget. Yes, of course, we have to look at it, but I'm more concerned about other spending. We're spending more than that on interest on our debt. So I believe we definitely need to have the strongest military in the world. But of course, yeah, we should look at our budget. But I support our military. And like I said, I believe in peace through strength.
Thank you. I wanted to pivot over to ask a question about health insurance. About 11% of Floridians lack health insurance, and that's well above the national average of 8%. And a lot of that, some people believe, is due to Florida leaders' refusal to expand Medicaid. My question is it time to allow very low-income Floridians to buy policies in the healthcare marketplace, or do you see other opportunities? And we'll start with Mr. Castillo.
Hi, so thank you for the question. Listen, anytime the government is involved, people lose. We see it in the student loans, we see it in Medicaid, Medicare, and I understand that there are Americans that need help, right? But what happens? The medical providers, the pharmaceuticals who are recipients of these dollars, they know that ultimately the dollars behind this are coming from the U.S. dollar, which is the U.S. taxpayer dollar. And they know that when the government's paying, the government can either print more money or tax more Americans for it, right? So the prices are just keep going up. So, from the get-go, I'm a constitutional conservative. I would have never supported something to be created as Medicare or Medicaid. We have it now, and I understand people need it. So if people need it, give the money to the people and let them make their own purchases. Do not let these medical providers know that the money is coming from insurance because of that, from Medicaid or Medicare, because at that point, they can charge us whatever. Why would they charge us X when they can charge us 2 times, 3 times, 4 times that, knowing that the government's going to pony up the money and they can just print it or tax us?
Thank you. Mr. Chalifoux, same question.
The medical situation, the budget's Department of Defense, we have a system that really needs to be overhauled. We're spending so much money on medical drugs, medical care. It doesn't seem like that's in my own company. I'm seeing a 20% increase in insurance coverage that I provide my employees. I mean, every year, a 15, 20% increase. We have to change the paradigm. The system is broken. There's an example in Indonesia where everyone pays into a medical insurance plan, and based on their health, at the end of their when they start to get that money back, or they goes into the system. We have to create a new system in medical care. I think the first thing we got to do is be proactive on people's health. And, you know, we need to have more people eat food. A lot of the foods are addicting, you know, sugar and everything, processed foods. I'm concerned that we work on, one of the things we need to work on is, you know, getting people to eat healthy, exercise, along with providing top medical care. You know, there are situations that obviously all those when you have medical emergencies, but the way we're going now, it continues to add more and more costs to our federal government or state government. Always needed, and I know there's a lot more knowledge than I do, but I think we need to sit down and figure out a better way. The system is broken, and we need to overhaul it. That question.
Thank you for that, Mr. Quinones. Same for you.
All right. Well, let me tell you, when I was in the state legislature, I served there for about 7 years, and you know, we created certain incentives. We had creation of the health savings healthcare system, so they could get more businesses to get healthcare savings. At the federal level, I do believe that, you know, you have grants that are given to each state, and the state is closer to the people to actually manage those grants and come up with innovative programs. So I will leave it to the states. And frankly, I think in Florida, it's been done correctly for many years. The reality is that it's going to continue to increase as long as we have open borders, as long as we have uncontrolled illegal immigration that suck up the resources, local resources, and frankly, including some benefits that are not even given to some of the ones that are here. And so that is actually a drain on the Medicaid budget. We need to make sure that grants are given to individual states, they're managed properly, and that there's tax incentives to provide health insurance. I do believe in some tax incentives, especially when it comes to small businesses. They can create a combination of different small businesses that can be more competitive and get better rates for its employees. So there's a myriad of things that can be done, but the federal government needs to get the hands off every single issue they think they can handle better than the state or local government. They're the furthest from the people. They need to leave it to the states and local governments to handle them. That's my philosophy.
Thank you for that. So the next question is going to be about abortion. What congressional action, if any, would you support on abortion access? And we'll start with Mr. Chalifoux.
Well, as we were aware, we have a constitutional amendment in Florida. And I feel like abortion issues should be handled at the state level. At this time, I don't support creating any additional legislation at Congress. I'd like to have that stay at the state level.
Okay, thank you for that. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you finished?
No, that was pretty much it. Yeah, yes, I'm finished.
Thank you. Mr. Castillo.
Thank you. Let me start by saying I'm pro-life. I'm 100% pro-life. I not always was pro-life. At a younger age, I was very indifferent to this issue. It wasn't until I became a father that I realized how wrong I was, and I value the sanctity of life. In Florida, the people are going to be able to vote this election cycle, and we're going to respect in Florida the will of the people. Personally, though, like I told you, I'm 100% pro-life. I know in cases there's people who have asked questions about exceptions, rape and incest, and I think when it comes to the case of rape and incest and taking away a life, I think we as a society, we should focus. If we're going to take away a life, we ought to take a life of the rapist and that person committing that crime, and not the baby.
Mr. Quinones.
Well, I'll tell you, we had a decision by the Supreme Court, the Dobbs decision that left it to the states to make decisions. We have a representative democracy, And I will start by saying that, you know, I've been endorsed by the Florida Family Action and also the Freedom and Faith Coalition, formerly the Christian Coalition. My record speaks for itself. When I was in the legislature and at the local level, I'm 100% pro-family when it comes to issues and pro-life. However, I will tell you this. I believe that some states like Florida decide through their representatives to change certain restrictions and to actually allow some exemptions, and they've done it, and that is the law of Florida. There are some other states that are more liberal and want to do things somewhat differently. That's what the Dobbs decision allowed each state to do that. And so I believe that the power of the states, you know, under not only the constitutional amendment of 10, where allows a lot of the rights to be preserved by the states, but it gives us the opportunity to elect our officials. And here in Florida, we're doing it right. You know, Ron DeSantis and the legislature, they have essentially created a new law when it comes to pro-life issues, and others can either follow or do something differently. And if the constituents don't like it, as their representative, they can certainly be changed, and it's called an election. So I believe that's a healthy system that we have, and I'm very supportive of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And speaking of elections, there is still some controversy among people who debate whether the United States election system is safe, secure, and accurate. I'd like each of you to weigh in with your view of that, starting with Mr. Quinones.
I do have to apologize, but it got cut off. Can you repeat the question, please?
I said, yes, there is some controversy over whether the American elections system is safe, secure, and accurate. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is that there's certainly room for improvement when it comes to elections. There's certainly room for election integrity to make sure that every voter has the confidence that that election has been done in a fair manner. And so we did see some discrepancies in the last election. Some people felt that it was worse than others, but I do believe that it's healthy in the democracy to make sure that we look all the time at the election laws and make sure that there's the best opportunity. You know, if it has to be having a backup to go back to having a paper ballot, and we're able to then corroborate in case of a very close election, God forbid, like the Gore versus Bush election, that we have every possible means to secure and have a fair election. I'm a true believer of that. And so, Florida has taken some steps to make sure that that happens. However, there's more that can be done at the federal level and create some uniformity among the states.
Mr. Castillo, same question.
Yes, thank you. Listen, I believe that the strength of our union depends on Americans trusting our electoral system, but Americans deserve a system that we can trust. And right now there is very little trust in that system. Right here in our district in Osceola County, supervisor of elections for the mail-in ballots, they've been sending mail-in ballots with the party affiliation on the outside of the envelope. You know, how can we trust that those mail-in ballots are going to get there safely and securely? But in the last election, that was the question. There was a lot of concerns from people. The Constitution of the United States of America says that the body that has the authority to set the rules for the election is the state legislature of each state. And the last election cycle, there was secretaries of states, there was governors, there was judges, and they were changing the rules mid-election. So I understand that people have concerns, and this is my promise to the voters. If you nominate me and you send me to Washington as your congressman, I will make sure that any state that sends electorals and does not follow the Constitution, I will reject.
Mr. Chalifoux.
Chris, it's a very sensitive issue. I believe only American citizens can vote in our elections, our national elections. I believe that the Constitution calls out for only Americans. I don't support illegal aliens voting in our election, number one. Number two, we want fair election, just like any sports. You want everybody followed by the rules and understanding what the rules are. I totally believe that we have to have that our elections are fair and not compromise by people that want to break the election laws. And I think there ought to be strict penalties for those that do. I support fair elections. I'm concerned about, in the past, we've had unfair elections going on, people stuffing ballot box. I'm concerned about how they are American, and having trust in our election system. We want a fair system at all costs. We can't afford to have people question our election system, whether it be a paper ballot or some system to ensure that we have fair, timely results in that totally are fair. No matter what party you represent, we want fair elections. We want only Americans voting in elections. We don't want illegal aliens voting in our elections. And that's my concern is having fair elections in America. Thank you.
Wanted to ask you all about climate change. A large majority of Americans believe that the nation's already suffering the impacts, but there's been widespread opposition to some of the big measures that might address climate change, including restrictions on gas-powered vehicles, greatly increased energy efficiency standards, everything from manufacturing to home use. What mandates would you support? And I will start with Mr. Chalifoux.
Hey, that's a good question. Where I'm concerned about our environment, I'm concerned about the clean air and clean water. I think we're all concerned about the high emission of CO2. And I say, well, what can we do to reduce CO2 emissions? Why can't we plant more trees? Take a look at what America's doing. As I said earlier, America represents 4% of the world's population, but what about the other 96% of the world? You take countries like Bangladesh and India and China and all these other nations that are big polluters. Why should America show the expense of cleaning up their mess? I believe America should do what it can for its environment. I believe that everybody wants a clean environment, but we can't break the bank when it comes to doing things that some of these scientists say that are needed. I'm an engineer with a sense of background in science. I go by what the raw engineering data is, the data that, show me the data. I mean, I'm all for having a clean environment, but again, let's not break the bank on environmental, some of these extremes that I've heard of. I don't believe cars are the problem. I don't believe a lot of these things are the issue. I think what can we do to improve our environment? Planting more trees or whatever to reduce the carbon emission. Jay, I think there's a lot of solutions out there, but again, some of the issues that are brought out there are way expensive for Americans to show that responsibility. Get the rest of the world do their share. I think the other thing, Jay, is look at all the pollution, people dumping plastic bottles into the ocean. I mean, there's all sorts of things the rest of the world can do, and we need to be champions for those causes. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Mr. Quinones, same question.
All right. Well, first of all, let's get this straight. There's always been climate change in the history of mankind. From the beginning of our creation, there's been climate change. There was something called the Little Ice Age. That was way before the Industrial Revolution. Some scientists think that Mayans, they went to the Yucatan Peninsula because of climate change. And there was also obviously Spaniards that came, but there was also climate change. So the point is this: How many remember the Inflation Reduction Act? Full of climate changes policies. And it was going to just decrease inflation. It was the Inflation Reduction Act. Soto voted for it. Biden-Harris administration, championed it. And what did it get us? Higher prices, higher inflation, and nothing in terms of climate change. I drive an electric car, but that's my choice. I don't want to be mandated. To answer your question, Jay, I don't want to be mandated that I have to use a car that's electric just because of so-called climate change, when in reality, we have other things that contributed that are natural. We could have a natural disaster, volcanoes, we can have other things. And so we need to be responsible. Clean water, I'm all for it, of course. Clean air, I'm all for it, of course. But these mandates like the Inflation Act that is full of supposedly climate change policies that are destroying our economy, absolutely not.
Thank you for that answer. Mr. Castillo, same question.
Thank you, Jay. They call it man-made climate change, and I call it a man-made scare tactic. And the reason I say that is because all that it has done, this whole talk about climate change, it has pushed manufacturing out of America into third world countries where they don't care about the environment. I went to China right before 2008, before the Olympics. I was there for a week. I landed at 6 a.m. and in the early morning, I thought it was a mist, a nice little mist over our heads. No, it was smog. The whole week I was there, I couldn't see the sun the entire week. So why are we sending manufacturing, pushing manufacturing out of America into countries where they could care less about the environment? So if any policies to help the climate, I would say let's bring back those factories back into America where we can develop better technologies. I can guarantee you any car that we're producing right now produces less pollution than cars made 20 years ago. So I believe in American ingenuity. So let's bring back manufacturing back here, and that's how we're going to save our planet.
We have gone through a lot of questions in a short time. I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask one that is certainly on everybody's mind right now. Earlier this month, we saw a shocking, horrible event take place at a Pennsylvania campaign rally where people were wounded, one was killed, and the president was himself hit by a bullet. What do you think most contributed to this? And is there something that leaders in this nation should be doing to bring about more reconciliation for the divisions in American society between the right and the left, or along any parallels? And we'll start with Mr. Castillo.
Listen, first of all, the thing that mainly cost us was incompetence in the Biden administration with their Secret Service. I cannot imagine. It's unfathomable what happened to President Trump or to anyone, regardless of what party it would be. It's just unbelievable what happened. But our country, we're in there's a battle right now, right, left and right, and we forget sometimes that we're all Americans. And I think that we should focus on that. Yeah, definitely we need unity in this country. But, it starts with the leaders in Congress. We have right now Congressman Darren Soto, right? He's met with, in the past congressional hearings, with people from Facebook and Twitter before Elon Musk bought Twitter, asking them to censor people who disagree with him. How can we have leaders in Congress who forget their oath of office, which is upholding the Constitution, and what they're doing there is just division? So that's what we need to do. We need to focus on making sure that the leaders go out there, fight for the people, and instead of this division and rhetoric.
Thank you, Mr. Chalifoux.
To that question, we as Americans have to work together, whether you're a Republican, Democrat, or Independent. We need to work together. There's no room for political violence. What we saw that happened in Butler County, Pennsylvania, is a lack of leadership, lack of training, lack of the right personnel, holding those people accountable. Coming from the military, I have seen time and time again, poor leadership creates poor results. What we saw is a lack of training, lack of leadership to have a director of the Secret Service side, not get firsthand what's going on, what we stop this from happening again, not 60 days, immediately. Let's process, let's get it done. I feel we have a responsibility to hold people that work for the government accountable. And what we have seen in the last 3.5 years, we've had people that haven't been accountable for doing their job. The border, we have the czar of our border crossing failing to do his job. We have, we got to get people to do, or we got to fire them. So there's, again, no room for political violence. People be held accountable to do their job. And let's work together as Americans. Let's reach across the aisle and say, what can we do as Americans to represent America? Makes no difference what your party is, but we have to work together as Congress. Thank you for that quote.
Thank you. Mr. Quinones.
I think we all can agree the Secret Service had the major duty to protect, obviously, the president, in this case, the former president. That's a major. It failed miserably. And so it never should have even gotten to the director resigning today. It should have gotten to a point where you had the leadership of the Harris administration, of the Biden administration, of the Soto, calling for her resignation, and actually within the Department of Homeland Security, firing her. What happened? Is what Trump said in the debate. Nobody gets fired under this administration. Nobody. Doesn't that show you the incompetence that something like this happened and we have to wait until both parties in a congressional hearing are telling her she needs to resign for her to actually resign? That is incompetence. And that's what's happening with the lack of leadership that we have in Darren Soto and also in the Biden-Harris administration. Also, the politicization of the Department of Justice. We cannot forget what we have in this mood, and what has brought all this is actually the politicization of the Department of Justice going after your opponents, And here's the thing. People will say, oh, well, no, this, 8-year-old or whatever years have lapsed before 2016 criminal prosecution really should have been done today. Yeah, right before the election. And you tell me that there's no politicization of the Department of Justice? Every American understands that there is, and that is what bringing the divide that we have in this country. That needs to stop. And when I'm in Congress, I'm going to make sure that that is part of my priority. Make sure that there's no more politicization in departments of justice and other agencies like the Secret Service.
So in a minute, I will ask each of you to wrap up your arguments for the incoming nominee in this race. But first, I would like to remind our readers, the Orlando Sentinel will be making an endorsement in this race. However, we want to remind everybody that there are lots of resources that you can use to evaluate each of these candidates, websites, their own websites and campaign social media, as well as our excellent news coverage and the questions that you hear from your friends and neighbors. So take a look at them, all three of them, decide which one best meets your values, and make sure Republicans in this district to come out and vote on or before August 20th in the Republican primary for District 9. And with that, we are going to go to closing statements. And before we do that, though, I do want to remind everybody to please mute your microphones so that we don't have a screen flicker. But we will start with Mr. Castillo.
Thank you. Listen, a week ago, we saw President Trump take a bullet for us. And after he did that, he rose up with blood pouring down his side of his face. And he said, fight. And I do believe that we need leaders in this country who are willing to fight for what they believe in. So I want to remind you, 2 years ago, I stood up for parental rights right here in Florida against my own employer. I went on national news. I was a guest on the Tucker Carlson show, Laura Ingraham. They asked me, "You're going against your own employer. Aren't you afraid of losing your job?" I said, "I'm not afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid of losing my country." That's just the person I am. I love this country. I want to fight for it. Our opponent, Darren Soto, I believe is a weak politician. This seat is winnable. Unfortunately, Darren Soto keeps winning. He's won the last 4 elections. We've had great candidates. We had a Navy veteran business owner. We had an Army veteran, Christian conservative. The only reason Darren Soto keeps winning is because our district is over 50% Hispanic. They're voting for his last name alone. And it's a shame. But I'm asking you to vote for me because, not because I'm Hispanic. I'm the most constitutional conservative. I'm the most pro-life candidate here in this race. And I believe it's time that we return the American dream back to the American people. So I'm asking you on this election, please stand with me. Together, we can save this country.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chalifoux.
Well, thank you for this interview. I thank my fellow candidates. America is going in the wrong direction. It's time to change. We find that legal immigration has been unchecked. We need to fix that. Well, the inflation has gone out of control. We need to cut government spending. We haven't talked about the infrastructure in Central Florida. We need to fix expand our roads. There's a lot of things in growth management we've got to solve. And being Central Florida, the fastest growing area in Florida, roads are a major concern. Transportation is a major concern, and we have to fix it. We have to bring money back home to help fix that situation. One of the things that we haven't talked about is the endless wars. The last 2 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, we spent approximately $7 billion and lost close to 7,000 American lives. We have to stop these endless wars, which was creating the tremendous debt that we have in our country. If you look at the 3 candidates running in the Republican primary, compare them side by side, I'm the most experienced, most background, military background, and business. I'm a successful businessman. I've served 8 years on the Osceola County School Board. I work with my fellow members, and I know how to get things done. I thank you, everybody. If you would look up thomaschalifoux.com. Thank you for your vote, and hopefully you'll elect me on August the 20th in the primary. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Quinones.
District 9 was created approximately 12 years ago, and no Republican has ever won it. I grew up in the island of Puerto Rico. I moved here when I was 14, and I went and worked at Disney so I could pay for UCF and Valencia. And then I had to take student loans so I could go to law school. It took me 10 years to pay them off, but I didn't need a Soto Biden bailout. I paid them off. It was over $100,000. I believe in equality of opportunities, not equality of results. And we do need to talk about electability because we have some fine candidates, and we have some fine candidates over the last 12 years. The reality is this. I know the district. I have actually won in this district already. When I was in the State House, it covered a large part of the district. And when I was in the county commission, I obviously represented the entire county. And I still won, and it was blue seats. So I obtained a lot of Democrat and Republican. Darren Soto took my place. He actually served in the House after I did. And then what did he do? He put a little coquille in his symbol and said, "Oh, I'm from Puerto Rico. Vote for me." Coquille is actually the island's frog. It's a very, everybody knows if you go there, it makes a beautiful noise. Some people find it annoying, but it's actually very beautiful. The point is this: he played identity politics and he won. Well, he doesn't even know the Puerto Rican culture as I know it. And I will make sure that I will beat Darren Soto. I'm the only candidate, with all due respect, that can beat him because I've done it before in the district. I have essentially flipped district 9 in different ways from blue to red previously. Vote for me. I'm a social conservative, and I'm also a fiscal conservative with a proven record. Thank you for your support. August the 20th, John Quinones.
Thank you so much.